And hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another edition of The Sit Down on the College Football Mafia Network. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown. And with me is a guy that I've really come to really enjoy takes and all the content that they put together covering Notre Dame and everything that is the Fighting Irish. That would be Dylan at the Four Horsemen podcast. How we doing, Dylan?
Oh, I'm doing great. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Happy holidays
Really,
and Merry Christmas to you and yours.
thank you. I'm looking forward to this one. As you can imagine, Notre Dame fans are a little tense lately with the big game coming tomorrow.
You cut out there for a second, Dylan.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
You could imagine Notre Dame fans are a little tense with the big game coming up tomorrow.
I would imagine. Yes, you guys got some ghosts. We'll talk about that a little bit. I was in high school when you won your last championship, so I know how long that's been. I'm not sure you've been around that long, have you?
And I have not been around that long. That's correct. I
Yeah, I've
felt
got
called
this
out.
gray hair for a reason.
Well, hopefully
Well,
it comes to an end this year.
and you know what? I'm not normally one, you know this. I'm not normally one that's cheered for Notre Dame, but in this particular case, going head to head, I find it hard to cheer for Georgia in this position because they lost their quarterback. They shouldn't even be in the CFP, should they?
Well, that's the rule according to last year's Florida State team, right? So I
Yes.
think a lot of people are just sick of the SEC this year, more so than
Uh-huh.
usual, because they win, they're the best conference and all, but just the way the narratives have been this year and the undefeated and hypotheticals that the SEC has been, and we just saw earlier today Alabama losing to a 7-6 Michigan team. So
Yeah.
I think you're seeing a lot of people cheer for Notre Dame who otherwise wouldn't this year.
Um, I'm just getting this note in here for myself so I can get back to it. Yeah, the boy, Kirk Herbstreit came out and put out a one-liner. Congratulations to Michigan. But the SEC's down hard, except for these teams that are in the CFP. They've had a hard, tough grind here in bowl season, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean Tennessee is the big one, right? You get on that stage, you kind of take over Ohio Stadium a bit, and then all of a sudden Ohio State smacks you into another dimension. So has not looked good for the SEC. I mean Vanderbilt won. That's been their shining star this year.
Right, right.
But I just think there's more parity than before, and I think that's something college football fans are still struggling to kind of wrap their heads around a little bit because this is as good as the SEC is. We've seen the Big Ten can put up just as great competition as they can. So
Right.
uh, I think this is such a unique season. I mean, this reminds me a lot of '07. Not only have you had a lot of chaos, but you think of the narratives this season, right? At one point, the two service academies were ranked in the top 25, and everybody felt really great about that until a certain program beat both of them pretty bad.
That's right. Yes.
But then, you've got the Indiana story. You've had the
Uh-huh.
SMU story. You've had BYU. As you know, they were not expected to win the Big 12 this year, and they
Right.
got pretty close. Really great season from the Cougars there. So I think this season just had so much to it. There's been so many interesting dynamics and narratives that it's just good for the sport, and that's what we need in this time of uncertainty.
It reminds me, and this is what I call the golden years, but the late 70s, all the 80s, and then the 90s, in my opinion, were the golden years of college football. You had more teams from more conferences winning more championships than we've had in the last 20 years, which has been a very limited number. And especially if you go back to USC in 2005, 2006, there haven't been many other teams that have won this thing outside of the Big Ten and the SEC. So obviously Clemson had their run, but the Pac-12 never won another one. And I think it's really interesting now this next 5 years with the changes in NIL and things that are happening with the transfer portal. We are going to see more of these teams, I think, that jump out. BYU's here to stay. I know that they're spending money to stick around, and they don't want to go down again. I think you're right. I would tend to follow exactly what you're saying, and I hope that leads to more competitive games. Like these quarterfinal games are going to be fantastic.
100%. And, Shane Gillis actually said it best on College Game Day for the first round of the playoffs. They asked him, do you think Notre Dame can win it this year? And he says, sure, now that everyone's allowed to legally pay players and it's not just Nick Saban at Alabama. Um,
Yes, that's right.
right? You're
Yeah,
going to
that
start to
really
see
is.
that. Not to say that certain northern schools haven't done things in the past, but certainly not at the same rate as we've all known a lot of the Southwest Conference did and the Southeast Conference has, you're going to start to see, now that everyone's hands are on the table, right? The cards are on the table, you're going to see a lot more parity. And I think that's so great for the sport. We still have a lot of challenges to rack in with the transfer portal and the
Right.
cap and what the governance situation is. I know you guys cover a lot of the realignment stuff. So, that still has to be questioned. But I think the actual talent disparity is getting better, which is, we really needed that. No offense to Alabama, but if I would have saw them won another national championship, I don't know if I could watch the sport anymore, right? Like, it was becoming a joke how frequently they were winning it. So this is good
Yes.
for, and hopefully, I'll never ever be happy that Michigan won anything, even though they totally cheated.
Yeah, they
It
had their own little bit with it, didn't they?
is good that another team has won one, and it hopefully
Yeah,
my interest this year, whether it be Notre Dame or whether it be like an Oregon, hopefully another team that doesn't usually win one wins one. And I think that'll start to build more competitive interest, and you'll see TV ratings spike, I think, as well, because that's what the NFL really dominates in.
absolutely. Yeah, college football is a sleeping giant when it comes to viewership. Most of that is rotates around the conference system rather than the league system. Could you imagine if college football was being administered as we'll just say it, 70-team super league that you could basically put structure around like an NFL light, and now all of a sudden you're playing regional games against teams in your sort of conference, and now all of a sudden you have conference championships leading up to a playoff format. That, I mean, you talk. I think the number that came out was something like $13 billion. Somebody has proposed to put something like that together. It almost would dwarf what the NFL is currently doing. So college football is a sleeping giant. It's just there's no structure.
It has the potential for sure, because I think the passion and the grassroots authenticity of college football is
Yeah,
so much better than the NFL. When I watch the NFL, I find everybody's the same. It's all kind of copy and paste franchises. Like, I don't see the same kind of passion. It feels very hollow to me. I don't feel the rivalries like I do in college football. And I
right.
think if you could get more competitive games, because that's one big issue college football's had, and the big brands playing each other, then you'll see, I think, actually the NFL get a run for its money. And just look at
Yeah,
the college football first round. You had the two primetime games, Notre Dame, Indiana, and Ohio State, Tennessee, 13 and 14 million viewers
they
respectively.
were crazy. Yeah,
That is nuts.
absolutely.
And no disrespect to Indiana, but Indiana is not really a team that attracts the general viewer, right? But
Right.
people are so intrigued by this playoff format, and it helps that Notre Dame's their partner and Ohio State is Tennessee's partner and all that. But it it just shows the potential this sport has, and I love it. I love to see it, but we have to be cautious with it too, because I don't want to. I'm a bit traditionalist. I don't want to change too much of the fabric of the sport, just to make some more money out of it. So there's an interesting balance we have to do there, and hopefully this house settlement can kind of get us in that direction.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you're saying, and it will be an interesting offseason. Again, there will be more realignment. There will be more NCAA legislation, and everything that goes around the next iteration of college football playoff negotiations for 2026 have to start this spring. So it's just an amazing time to be a college football fan, and I appreciate you coming on the show and spending a little bit of time with me. I know this is the holiday season, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but people have questions. So if you're watching right now and you have questions for Dylan about Notre Dame or the CFP quarterfinal games, now's your chance to ask them. Make sure you're following both of us on Twitter. You can find Dylan at Four Horsemen Podcast on Twitter. And then, of course, you guys know where to find me on YouTube and on Twitter. We appreciate everybody that has contributed to get us to where we're at, and we hope that more of this content is something that you're looking for. So this will be a fun show. I've been looking forward to it. We were going to do it last week, but I had to push, so I appreciate we were able to do it again today. So let's just quickly review what games we got coming starting tonight. But we'll just run through these top to bottom. So Ohio State plays Oregon. Arizona State plays Texas. Notre Dame plays Georgia, and we'll talk about that one last, Dylan. But then there's that really intriguing Boise State Penn State game. So of these other games, not the Notre Dame game, but these other games, which is the one you're most interested in?
I mean, it has to be the Rose Bowl, I think.
Yeah.
You've got that rematch from that epic game this year between Oregon and Ohio State, two national championship contenders, legitimately,
Yep.
two big brands. It's just it's setting up for a very perfect day with that leading into the Sugar Bowl. I want to give the other games, credit as well. I think they're very intriguing, particularly the Arizona State Texas game. I was saying this on my podcast. I don't really know what Texas is because when I look at that team, they shouldn't be struggling to play and to put away Clemson or
I agree
Arkansas.
with you.
And they've shown to be a little vulnerable, and they for lack of a better word, they choked away a lead against Georgia with a backup quarterback in the
Yep.
SEC championship game. So I think Arizona State can get at them, but I still believe that this Texas team is pretty good. So I find that matchup super intriguing. Penn State, Boise State will be, I'll definitely tune into it, but I probably of the four games, it might be my least interested one just because of how good the Penn State defense is, and I'm worried that game can get a little out of hand.
They
But
played
yeah,
really well last week. I will give you that. Penn State played exceptional last week.
yeah, they did. They've really, I think, turned some heads last week, so myself included. So it's a great slate. The next round's going to be even better, and that's what I love about this playoff format is you're getting good games pretty much every week, and the drama is so high in these ones. I mean, at that Rose Bowl rematch, I'm licking my chops to get into that one.
It's interesting. Oregon is actually a dog in that. I think they're down. The spread was 1.5 or 2 last time I checked it to Ohio State. So that's an interesting one because obviously Oregon beat Ohio State earlier in the season, but they've been off now for 2.5 weeks. Whereas Ohio State's had this game in between that really gave them an opportunity to sort of get back on top of their momentum. Who do you think wins that game?
Well, I'll walk you through my process because I was anticipating, like everybody, for this to be the rematch in the Big Ten championship game.
Right.
So after that game, I picked Oregon to win because they were at home. Very close game, could have gone either way. I was preparing myself to take Ohio State in the rematch all year because I know how good this Ohio State team is. I think Oregon is great, but I think Oregon can be beaten for sure. So I was expecting Ohio State to win the rematch. Then Ohio State did this thing where they lost to a very mediocre Michigan team in
Yeah.
maybe the funniest thing of the year. Just given the importance of that game to those two fan bases,
Right.
and that sort of changes everything because then it's like, well, do I trust this Ohio State team to go up against Oregon? Is the confidence in the room lost? Right? Does Ryan Day still have the belief in the heart of the men in the room? And then they go out and they just obliterate Tennessee. So then I'm thinking,
Yeah.
well, man, if that team shows up, that's going to be hard to beat. So here's my analysis on it because I think there's just so many variables. In very close games, I like to look at two factors: who's got the better quarterback and who's got the better coaching. In those instances, I like Dylan Gabriel more than Will Howard, and I do like Dan Lanning more than Ryan Day. So I'm going to very narrowly take Oregon to win this one. But Ohio State fans, please don't kill me. If you win that game, congratulations. It's very well possible you could. So I'm looking forward to that one for sure.
So this game is interesting for me because I didn't get a chance to talk about this with our team last week, but um, I'm an everybody against Oregon type of guy. I'd love to see Phil Knight spend his money and still not get a championship. So from a
Right.
rooting interest, I absolutely want Ohio State to win this game. But and I've never told anybody this, so it's interesting. You echoed exactly my thinking. I agree with you. I think the coaching deal with Ryan Day at Ohio State, he has some mental blocks with some of these games, and I think he might make some major mistakes. So Dan Lanning, I'm not saying he's coach of the year or anything, but Dylan Gabriel, I think, has shown that he can be prolific. And it depends which Ohio State team shows up. If it's the Ohio State team that blew out Tennessee, a very good Tennessee team, I think they have a real chance to win this game. But if it's the Ohio State that lost to Michigan, and that was an ugly loss, then Oregon, I think, runs the table. So it'll be really, really interesting to see who wins. But I'm cheering for Ohio State.
Yeah, all good points. I'm
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 not sure
curious
they're
what
points.
I'm curious what the Big Ten fan base in general is rooting for here, because you got
Right.
your new toy in Oregon, and then you've got your traditional blue blood in Ohio State. So I'm very curious what Big Ten country thinks of this game. But it's going to be a great spectacle for the Big Ten to be in
I
this Rose Bowl game with these two teams. And one thing I like is that it's kind of a traditional Rose Bowl game. You have a Big Ten
of course it
and
is. Yeah.
and a Pac-12 team, so it
Yep.
works out pretty nice. But yeah, this is going to be the best one, I think.
From an irony standpoint, that definitely is interesting. I completely agree with you. Oregon versus Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, where they should play every championship game from here to eternity. All right, let's quickly touch on Texas, Arizona State. I know you did a brief preview. I actually have Texas winning this, but not by 13.5 points. I think that's the point spread now. I think Arizona State can cover and give Texas a little bit of a scare. Texas does not look like world beaters right now.
100%. I agree with everything you just said there on our show. I took Texas to win a close game, but I have Arizona State covering 13 whatever points it is. I think that's just way too high for a Texas team that just there's something missing. There's just something missing
Yeah,
there. And Arizona State can run the ball really well. So if they can get that going, I think that game could be a real world beater. But yeah, I do have the Longhorns because at the end of the day, I don't know if there's 12 teams that are competitive with each other in college football at the moment. I
right.
still think there's a talent gap, so I think Texas will pull through. But I got nothing against Texas, but I would love to see one of these smaller programs like Arizona State and Boise State win these games. I think it would be great for college football and just contribute to the parity. But
Yes.
I got the Longhorns in this one.
Yeah, I would love Arizona. I'm a Big 12 guy, so I'm cheering for ASU. I hope they win. We got a lot of ASU people that watch this channel, so I know that there's a lot of support there. We'll just have to see if they can control the clock. The way they beat BYU is they control the clock. The way they beat Iowa State, they scored early and controlled the clock. So that's their template to win. Can they do that against a Texas team that I think, from an eye test perspective, and I hate that word or that term, but from an eye test perspective, has the talent gap. So we'll have to see. I think it could be a really entertaining game. Boise State, Penn State. I think this is the one of all four of these that has the biggest chance to be a big blowout. It's not so much that Boise State doesn't have a chance to play; they can, but Penn State just looks so dang good, and I think they're tuned up to make a run here.
Yeah, I think Boise State's going to have to make Penn State respect their passing game to open up running
Right,
availabilities. Because
right.
if you can just zero in on the Heisman runner-up, this could be a long day for Boise State. They're going to have to find ways to get Penn State off of them. And I don't think Penn State's offense is really great, to be honest with you.
Right.
I think Penn State's a good team, but they can be got. I just don't know if Boise State's the team to do it. So I've got Penn State covering for this one. But that's another game where I'm going to be cheering for Boise State for sure, as I'm sure the entire country will be. They're such a great Cinderella story.
The game that should have been is BYU versus Penn State in Pennsylvania.
That would have been a good one.
The BYU game, the team that just took apart Colorado, I think could beat this Penn State team. I know people are probably
Congratulations.
laughing in the Big Ten, but unfortunately, it's the game you're never going to see, right? That's one thing,
Well,
the romance of college football.
well, I think you would certainly have a good chance, and I wanted to congratulate you on winning that bowl game.
Oh,
BYU's done so great this year, and I think they would be a pretty tough matchup for Penn State. So I'm with you there. I was kind of hoping to see them in this playoff. It didn't shake out that way, but
right.
like you said, they're making financial commitments, and that's what it's going to take to stay there. So I'm all for it. I love us small religious schools got to stick together, right? So
I'm all with you there. Absolutely 100%. It takes something special to do this stuff on your own. There's a lot of stuff that is against a private school. There are some advantages, but there are some built-in things that aren't for religious institutions, including Notre Dame, that you have to sort of get over the hump to be competitive. That's why Penn State, last championship they won was when they were independent, right? So it's a little bit different if you're an independent religious private school anyway. All right, so yeah, I had Penn State covering. Unfortunately, I think the Cinderella run for Boise State will probably come to an end. I'd like to see him win the game, but boy, that's a tough hill to climb, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, let's talk Notre Dame, Georgia. This is the one that you're most tuned into. I'll give you my opinion really quick. I think Georgia, the whole Carson Beck fiasco. Is he playing? Is he not playing? Is he out? Is he not out? What's he going to do at the end of the season has become a bit of a circus. And I think Notre Dame's going to catch them on the hop and could actually beat them by a little bit. So normally I would pick Georgia in this matchup, but I think after watching Notre Dame last week, who they looked really good, I think they're catching the Georgia team right now that's probably in the worst position it's been all year.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to be sharing that opinion, which as a Notre Dame fan, that scares me. I got a little
You don't want to be the
PTSD in these
front
games.
runner, right? Okay.
Exactly. Don't give Kirby Smart any material to put on the board.
Okay.
Let's. I'm happy to be the underdog in this one, but I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I'll be honest. I would think this game is competitive regardless of who is at quarterback for Georgia. That's partly because I'm not the biggest believer in Carson Beck, and
Right.
also because we saw Stockton come in the second half and Georgia played better.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if the gap between those two is super large. We'll find out for sure. I mean, if Stockton throws 6 interceptions, we'll have an idea. But I think this is going to be a competitive game. They're two very similar teams in the sense that they're physical and they want to dominate the line of scrimmage, which makes it very interesting. The thing with Notre Dame is, look, we've been hearing it all year, right? NIU, you lost to NIU, and that's fair. We did. But a lot of people stopped watching Notre Dame after that game and did
Yeah.
not see, right? Today, the Dodd Trophy just named Marcus Freeman Coach of the Year. And the reason for that is because Notre Dame pulverized all of their opponents after that.
Right.
They walked through everybody. And look, I know the service academies weren't, legitimately top 12 teams, but they're still good football teams, right? We saw Navy beat Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Oklahoma wasn't the best in the world, but that's not like, you didn't play some garbage team and destroyed them. You played a good team and destroyed them. Louisville's been a good team. Louisville beat Clemson, right? Georgia Tech gave Georgia struggles. Haynes King wasn't playing in that Notre Dame game, but it wouldn't have mattered because Notre Dame had really suffocated them in that game. So it doesn't surprise us Notre Dame fans to see people start to come around to us because we've been seeing it for a while. And we were going into the season one of the favorites to make the playoff and perhaps make a run. So none of
Right.
this is really surprising. But just seeing how the team is locked in, right? They've had to be in a playoff elimination game since week 2. And that
Yeah.
creates such mental strength. And that's the one thing with this team. And it's a little bit different from our predecessor is I'm not worried about big games anymore. I know this team's going to be prepared. If they lose to Georgia, it's because Georgia's a better team. It's not going to be because Notre Dame came in flat or Notre Dame just didn't have the ability to match up with them. I think Notre Dame's going to come in with a great strategy, and they're going to be ready. They're going to play hard. And this team is so fundamentally sound that in a game where tackling can be the ultimate decider, because I think this will be a low-scoring game, I like where we're at with it. So I'm feeling pretty good. The defense is phenomenal. The offense is good, but it could be better. And that's kind of what's exciting is that we haven't seen this offense at its best yet. It's still kind of working out kinks. It's funny to say that at the end of the season almost, but it's a new offensive line. It's a new quarterback. The receivers are, been getting more chemistry with Riley Leonard as the season's gone on. So, everyone's going to have to be at their best, but I foresee this being a really low scoring game, a really ugly game, but hopefully a really entertaining one.
If it's a low scoring game, then you're calling for Notre Dame to win.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think what it is for me is Notre Dame's run game. I think Georgia at the line of scrimmage is going to beat Notre Dame. Like their defensive line is going to beat our offensive line more often than not. I think Notre Dame's going to struggle
Probably.
to run the ball.
Right.
But what Notre Dame's run game does amazing is the big chunk plays. That is part of Notre Dame's run game is they have 2 backs that are explosive. If you go back to that Texas A&M game, right, the point where Notre Dame takes the lead in that game is when Jadarian Price, the number 2 running back, bounces to the outside and he's gone. And he takes one to the house for about 50 yards. We saw last game, Jeremiah Love, with the flu, by the way, run 98 yards, the longest in Notre Dame Stadium history, for a touchdown. That's the thing. I don't know if Georgia's going to be able to stop the whole game. Is can you prevent any sort of explosive plays? And Georgia, from what I understood statistically, they're very middle of the pack for allowing explosive runs. And when you add on top of that, that you have Riley Leonard, who's such a great runner, and Georgia has struggled with running quarterbacks, right? Jalen Milroe, um, Jackson Dart, Haynes King. They've all ran for near, if not more than 100 yards on Georgia. I think there's just too much in the run game for Notre Dame to be stuffed the entire game. And I think we're going to be able to move the ball eventually and break through. And with the physical style we play, I think we can just sort of uh, just drain Georgia by the end of the game, if that makes sense. If we can maybe
Sure.
exhaust them with the way we play. And I think on the flip side of things, my concern for Georgia would be I just don't know how they're going to score on this Notre Dame team with a very pedestrian, for Georgia standards, wide receiver group. Like, it's not anything special.
Right.
And a
This
Notre
is
Dame
not
defense.
Georgia from 2 years ago. It's not the same
Exactly.
team. Yeah.
And, and for whatever, this is a first time starting quarterback. And I think Al Golden has done such a great job as the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame that we're going to play a lot of man. So we're going to force Stockton to beat us in man. And if he doesn't, well, we're going to be coming down to stop the run. So I think it's going to be low scoring. I don't think either team's going to really look great in this game. But I do think, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I do think Notre Dame's going to beat Georgia.
From a third-party perspective, I will let you know that after the NIU loss, I was one of those guys that really wrote Notre Dame off. I said the Texas A&M win was a fluke, and where do you go from there? That's kind of what I was thinking. As the season progressed, it looked obvious that they weren't going to lose another game. So them being penciled into the playoff, I think, was a given. But I will say this: after the game last week, Indiana, yeah, they didn't have the greatest season. In other words, they had a good season, but they didn't beat a lot of really tough foes throughout the year. So it was hard to know what you were going to get from them. Still, they put up a lot of points throughout the season, and Notre Dame handled them pretty easily. I don't think this is the same Notre Dame team that we've come to sort of expect in the last 20 years. The Manti Te'o team, where they're out there and they come in, they're rolling, they come to win a championship, and they get boat raced because their defense simply cannot keep another offense down. This is a different team, and I think if you win, it's on your defense side. I don't think it's because of your offense.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And I think that's a testament to Marcus Freeman. I'm not sure what neutral fans really think of him, but Notre Dame fans are in love with Marcus Freeman. We were in love with it. We wanted him to be the hire after Kelly left.
Okay.
Um, we've had a lot of confidence in him just because of the way he identifies with the program, the way he embraces Notre Dame. He's a very much a Notre Dame man. That's why when we extended him, everybody was thrilled because this guy understands sort of, apologies for my homerness, but the specialness and the uniqueness of what Notre Dame is and how to present that to recruits and how to develop young men. He
Right.
feels very much like a throwback to Lou Holtz. And I
Wow.
think that
Okay.
I'm not saying he's as great as a coach. He's got to go win things. I'm not
Right.
celebrating him as, the best coach in the country, but we see a lot of similarities to what Coach Holtz did. And I just think he prepares teams better than his predecessor did. And I think he's willing to put in the recruiting work to make sure that talent gap when we get in these games is not what it was in some other previous games where we've been on this stage. So I think this is a little bit of a new era for Notre Dame. Look, we're not going to win every big game, but I think we're going to win a lot more than we used to. And this is such a opportunity to change the narrative about Notre Dame football. Because that A&M game was kind of that, okay, you showed you could win a big game on the road in a hostile environment.
Right.
Indiana, you won a playoff game. That's a big thing. But it was still, we knew we were the better team going into that one. This
Right.
Georgia game is, to me, undisputably a game where if you win it, things change. Recruits look at you differently. The narrative changes. All of a sudden, you're a much more viable threat to win the national championship in the eyes of many. And perception does
Right.
mean stuff. So I think this game has huge implications for recruiting classes specifically, which is something Notre Dame is really looking to improve on. So I really hope we get it done. It's just we had this opportunity last year against Ohio State in a game we should have won. I mean, we choked it away at the end. and we had to delay that gratification. But hopefully, this is the year where we sort of get to turn that page and show people we are legit. But we'll find out soon enough. And I just, as a Notre Dame fan, I hope it's not another one of these games where it's a little humiliating by the end of it.
For you guys to have an exemplar, harkening back to Lou Holtz, you could do a lot worse. Those 80s Notre Dame teams were mean. And I mean
Yep.
like vicious mean. Like if you played against Notre Dame, it's like you were playing Georgia 2 years ago. It was that type of dominance. And it's just sort of now a lot of that is the NIL, a lot is that transfer portal, right? Notre Dame has to fight for the same recruits that everybody else does. So they don't have necessarily all the advantages they did during the 80s and 90s, but still, they're Notre Dame, and that brand still carries a huge badge of value. And I think that's, I agree with you. You change the narrative. You guys beat Georgia. Maybe you win the next game. You beat Penn State, who's more of a traditional rival. Now all of a sudden you're in a championship game against. You look at the other side of the bracket. You're playing somebody big, so it's a great opportunity to show out. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I'm glad you mentioned that point about those 80s and 90s Notre Dame teams, right? I mean, you don't beat Miami of the late 80s if you're not
No,
a hard-nosed football team, right? And I
no,
think that's what they want to get back to, is that's what Notre Dame used to do so good, and that's what's the shame is. Notre Dame was known for the underdog who would upset the big team. Notre Dame would come into big games and win them all the time. We
right.
prevented Alabama from winning 3 national championships under Bear Bryant, although one of them they still claim, which is ridiculous because Notre Dame won the Sugar Bowl that year. But, I digress. But yeah, this Notre Dame team has a history, or at least the program, of punching above your weight and winning those games. And in the last
Right.
20 years, it's been the opposite of that. And I find that's kind of the biggest crime for the Notre Dame brand, is that's what we've kind of become. So it all starts with this one here. And, I'm really excited about a potential Penn State matchup as well. Cause like you said, that a great traditional game there, two very similar teams with a history of playing each other.
Every year it seemed like they had a game that went to the very end. Paterno and whoever the Notre Dame coach was at the time, and they were always some of the best games of the year. So sorry, I get a little sentimental sometimes, harkening back to these old times. Most of the people watching right now aren't as old as I am, so they're probably going, "What are you talking about old football for?" But that's the reason. We're gonna go into Q&A right now. I'm gonna do some shout outs. So if you have any questions that you want to run by Dylan or I in the next several minutes after I do some shout outs, please put them in the comment section. If you want to make a donation to our holiday cheer here, you can make a super chat donation and give that to the College Football Mafia Network. Other than that, feel free to leave your comments and I'll read as many of them as time permits. And we'll just plan on going another 15 minutes or so. So let me do some shout outs and then we'll move down the road a little bit. First of all, Jamie Bangles checking in saying, "You have the best guest of all time, Nate. Go Irish." So Jamie Bangles girl is here for you, Dylan.
I appreciate that, Jamie.
She follows up by saying Arkansas with the big win. WPS Arkansas and Vandy. So those are the two. Are those the only SEC victories so far? I
Off the
don't
top
know
of
if
my
that's true or
head,
not.
but I got to say, Notre Dame's got Arkansas coming up next year, and I'm really looking forward to that one. So I'm sure Jamie and I will have a fun week of teasing each other, but it should be a good game. And I got a lot of respect for those SEC teams that have been beaten up in the past, yet still come back and beat those teams,
Right.
every few years. And I thought Arkansas and Vandy, they weren't perfect seasons, but I thought they were really good seasons for both of them. So, credit to those fan bases.
I have nothing but respect for Arkansas. They were a fantastic. They played home and home with BYU, and not a lot of teams do that because they don't want to come to Utah and play. So tons of respect for Arkansas. Sui, there we go. Numbschool News checking in. One of our valuable members of the Mafia family saying, "I'm rooting for the Golden Domes." Before I move on from that, what has been your perception? Do you have more support or are people cheering against Notre Dame? What's your general thought about that?
Well, when you're used to everybody and their dog hating you for being Notre Dame, any kind of support feels feels like a change in momentum. But what I will
Right.
say is, I think ever since So, I don't mean to bring up Brian Kelly here, but he was a personally unlikable guy for a lot of college football fans.
Yes.
Just neutrals did not like him.
I
So
I
when he
thought he
left,
was I thought he was a fool myself.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you're certainly not alone in that. And
Yeah.
when he left and Freeman, who's a very likable, charismatic guy, came in, I think a lot of people's attitudes towards Notre Dame changed a bit. And then specifically with this year, I saw in the comment section someone said it's SEC fatigue. I think that's definitely part of it too. I think people are sick of the narratives that are out there. So I would say is I'm actually starting to feel more people cheering for Notre Dame, especially from our traditional northern rivals. Like I've seen some
Right.
USC folks or Michigan folks or Ohio State folks who've never said anything nice about Notre Dame in their life, all of a
Really?
sudden
That's
cheering
surprising.
for us. Me too, yeah. But
Wow.
I think people are just starting to rally around the SEC. And shout out to Numbskull News. I've checked out a few of his videos in the past. He does some great content there too. So appreciate your support, and hopefully we can come through tomorrow.
Yeah, that's really cool. He has some of the best stuff, creator content on college football. People should definitely follow Numbskull News. Harry Austin, another one of our members, says afternoon bomber taking a break from the BYU Utah tampering discussion. I see. LOL. Yeah, there was this whole BYU Utah inbred. We're stealing from you, so you're stealing from us, and tampering and all this stuff. I have no problem with any of it. Most of the fan stuff I don't get into, but when people make accusations like official, like BYU the organization, officially tampered, yeah, it riles me up a little bit.
Yeah, well, I love that
Um,
rivalry, and I'm so glad it's in conference now. So looking forward to
yeah,
that for years to come.
it's only going to get more intense, I promise. It's getting uglier every year, which is great. I love it. He also says, and congrats to your BYU for beating my Buffaloes. Yeah, it was I wanted it to be a better game. I must admit, Harry, I was hoping that game would be like blow after blow, back and forth. Instead, it ended up turning into a bit of a boat race. That surprised everybody, I think. Illini Ted checking in from the Big Ten. Another one of our members says, glad Alabama showed everyone they made a mistake. Oh gosh, that where are we going to be with Kirk Herbstreit? Where does that end?
Somebody had a funny video where it's like Kirk Herbstreit after Alabama loses, and it's him playing with his dogs to sort of distract people from some of the
Mm-hmm.
stuff he said. And look, I like Herbie. I understand he's pissed off a lot of people with the way he's shilled out for the SEC, but it just makes for good banter, and I think banter is one of the great things that makes college football what it is.
Oh, you're so positive. I love your positivity. Rock and Rant, one of our contributors, friend of mine, and also a member, saying this is how messed up college football season has become because of the SEC narrative propaganda. For literally the first time in my life, I'm hoping Notre Dame wins, and that's painful. He's a Miami guy. So for a Miami guy to cheer for Notre Dame to beat an SEC team, you really know the world is shifted on its axis, right?
Definitely, and I love that Miami Notre Dame rivalry. So we'll allow it for this game, Rock and Rant, but after that, we have to go back, I think, to hating each other.
Hey, Catholics and convicts was one of the best branding operations I've ever seen in my life.
It is, and
Watching
I
that
think
in
we should
real
call it.
time was remarkable.
I think we should almost rebrand Notre Dame Georgia Catholics versus convicts too, given all their
Hey,
car issues this year.
yeah, yeah, something maybe like the highway patrol or something like that. Line Ted says that no SEC semifinal would really hurt the narrative that they're the de facto best conference and would win every hypothetical game. Yeah, from that standpoint, I would love a no SEC championship game, wouldn't you?
Yep, definitely. And if you had Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame, and Penn State as three of your four finalists, that says a lot about Big Ten country, maybe is what I should say, or
Yeah,
Northern football, which I think
it's
we need to
true.
we need more parity in that sense as well. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I really hope Arizona State shocks the world. That's the game I would really love to see something just go crazy. And Texas, again, they're not unbeatable. We've seen that. So Nathan Campbell checking in, saying, hi, guys. Good to have you here, Nathan. Thanks for joining me on a pop up show we're doing between holidays. The Architect checking in. Good to see Architect. It's been a minute. It isn't Notre Dame. It's SEC fatigue. Notre Dame has got to beat Georgia with a backup QB.
I think there's some valid points there. I still think Georgia is great with this backup QB, so I wouldn't be heartbroken too much if we lost. But I do think this is the opportunity to win the game, and I think we will. But there's good points there. There's a lot for Notre Dame to prove this week.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Earl Card checking in, one of my BYU brothers, saying, Sup, Bomber? Good to see you, Earl. Happy holidays to you and everybody that's watching right now. Happy New Year, happy holidays. I say all those things. I hope your families are doing well. Stay safe. Don't drink and drive. Let's all come out of this on the other side safe and happy. And I hope everybody enjoys these holiday bowl breaks that we've got in these playoff games, which are just going to be fantastic, I think. Fatal Jedi checking in saying, what's up, guys? Good to see you, Fatal Jedi. Motivated, dedicated. There's a name I haven't seen before. Welcome to the channel. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and get involved in our College Football Mafia Network stuff, everything we do. Members drive that. We have special member videos and other things that we do. Our next show will be on Friday night. Because tonight's New Year's Eve, we're doing a Friday night show for our Big Freaking Friday. Catch us at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Kirby is 5-1 in the playoffs. Yeah, Georgia. I still think Georgia would have won it last year if they'd gotten in.
Very good chance. In fact, I wish that would have happened given the actual outcome. So
yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about last year. Jamie again says, had a great time playing BYU, had a great time playing Arkansas. Thank you so much, Jamie. Let's see, a couple more comments here. Jay Lamont says, Notre Dame ain't losing to Stockton. Stop it. And then
I hope you're right.
Stockton is going to spot Notre Dame 14 off turnovers. That's one thing Georgia has just been horrible this year. Their turnover ratio is ridiculous bad.
Well, and one thing the Notre Dame defense is amazing at is taking the ball away. So that's going to be something to watch there for sure. I mean, could you just imagine the narrative, not if Notre Dame wins, but if they blow out Georgia? I mean, I'm sure people will say, oh, it's a backup quarterback. We're used to that.
Right.
But I think if you were to win by 14 points, that really is a statement.
Completely agree with you. Jay Lamont makes a prediction, 31-17 Irish. What's your point spread? That's 14 points. What do you think is going to be?
So my official score prediction is 17-10. I've got this as a one-score game. I just think Notre Dame late might break off a run. That's how close I see it. I would love if Jay's right there. It'd be a much easier watch for me if I didn't have to be biting my nails the whole time. But I think it's going to be low scoring and ugly.
Yeah, it depends what that quarterback does. I just don't know. They did look better. I agree with you. They did look better when he came in the second half against Texas. I agree with you there. I don't know. It's hard for me to cheer for Georgia right now just because of all the SEC crap. Rock and Ran again says Miami and Notre Dame kick off next season, but let's be clear, when Catholics and convicts came out, there were more arrests in the Notre Dame team than the Miami team that given time. I wasn't really making a speak about who's the convicts and who's the Catholics. All I'm saying is it was a great rivalry, and I've missed it. I missed all the 80s and 90s rivalries, the Nebraskas and Florida States and Floridas. And I mean,
this is
Oklahoma.
Anyway, with the Miami rivalry, I don't know what the Miami fans think of it, but I always say it's like the Notre Dame hipsters' favorite rivalry is the Miami one because of how intense those games were for so long. And they have a long history. They've played about 30 times because they were both independent for the longest time.
Yep.
So, I love to see that game come back. I think it's a damn shame the ACC has not made this more frequent. So Notre Dame joined the ACC in part in 2014 was the first year. We have played Miami 2 times in 10 years. And we were supposed to play this year. Miami's athletic department had overscheduled them, so we agreed to move it for them. But still, 2 in 10 years, even 3 in 10 years is not enough. That game should be maybe annual. You think of the marketing you could sell on that, right? Especially if Miami's remotely good, which they were in 2017, and that was a huge game that year. So, I'm with you. I'm just glad he didn't bring up the non-fumble in the 88 game because Miami fans like to bring that one up, but what they never bring up is that they had a touchdown called that was totally dropped. So I know I respect him for not saying that. I'm just used to whenever I talk to Miami fans bringing up that point too.
I saw that game live, and it was a touchdown. That's all I'm saying. I saw it live, watching it. I think it was an ABC broadcast at the time, and it looked to me like he got in. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. One last comment, and then we're going to get out of here. I'm going to let you go. Harry Austin saying SEC is undefeated in hypothetical games, but struggle in real games. Love it. Harry, you're so right. You're so right. All right. One of you, again, Dylan, tell everybody where to find your stuff.
Absolutely. You can find us on Twitter, now X, Blue Sky, Instagram, with the handle Horseman Pod, or look up For Horseman Podcast. And we are available anywhere you get podcasts. We have a link tree on our Twitter profile you can go to. It takes you to, Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast, we are there. So we welcome you into our community. We are Notre Dame centric, but we're, one of my favorite things has been getting to know other fan bases with this podcast.
Right.
So please come in. I have great friends with rivals, even, some of my best friends on Twitter are USC. So you're welcome to join us. We are a bit of a propaganda machine, but we own it because we are Homer Notre Dame fans. But I do have one potential nugget for you before I go, if you're interested, because I know you guys are realignment folks.
We are, yes.
The Notre Dame athletic director, the new director, Pete Bavacqua, was doing a press conference about a week or two ago.
Okay.
And a lot of interesting stuff came up. He was asked about the house settlement, which was definitely something he told someone to ask him. But one of the things that came up was realignment. Now, take this for what it's worth, guys. It's just the Notre Dame athletic director, although, the Notre Dame athletic director is akin to a conference commissioner in many ways with how many fingers Notre Dame has everywhere. They got a good pulse on it.
Swarbrick held great sway for decades.
Absolutely. Yeah. And something Pete Bavacqua said, and this is interesting, and I hope not to ruin anybody's excitement for realignment, but he said that they expect realignment to cool down this offseason. Right. And he also said, we can't control anything going on between Florida State and Clemson, but I know we would love to have them in the ACC. So take that for what it is. It's not, that's not a gospel statement, but Notre Dame feels like realignment's going to cool down in the upcoming years. Hopefully that puts maybe an end to all the chaos, but we could be totally wrong, and maybe that was just a nice statement put out there, but just something to keep an eye on.
They could silence that right now, Dylan. Just have ESPN sign the agreement to extend past January 2025, and realignment disappears.
And
all you have to do is sign that media deal and extend it.
I wonder if maybe that is coming, if maybe there's going to be a temporary agreement between Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC.
It's possible.
And I could see maybe Notre Dame being a role in that. For example, I've talked about this with some FSU fans about playing FSU every year as an opportunity to make more money for the ACC to sort of keep Florida State happy. That's something that, I'd be more than happy to provide. So just a little interesting tidbit as we head to the offseason. We'll talk more about realignment then, but I thought I would leave on that note because I know how much you guys love the realignment stuff.
Yeah, you know what? We're all gearing up for more madness. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be crazy like it was the last 2 years. I think that's pretty evident. The only real movement you're going to see is maybe at the G6 level, or you have some stuff with the ACC and how that sort of wraps up. My opinion is Florida State's all in. They're well over $1 million now in legal bills alone. So for them to get their face back to settle with the ACC, to sort of settle that down, two things that have to happen. ESPN would have to sign the agreement by the end of January this next year, which starts tomorrow. And then that settles the media part of it. They have that guaranteed money going forward. And two, they would have to make some fairly significant contributions to Clemson, Miami, Florida State, maybe even Louisville, to keep them happy to stay in the conference long enough to get to that 2030-31 bridge, which is kind of what everybody's pointing to. It's after the next college football playoff negotiation, I think, extends to 2030-31. It'll go after 2026. A lot of dates wrap up to the end of the decade, and that's probably what they're trying to do is buy some time. I would just say this: Brett Yormark is not going to go away, and he's talking to some guys that have a lot of money in private equity. And if they come along and say, "Hey, we'll buy you out right now. You come and play with us for 5 or 6 years till we get to that next window," they might just go just to get away from everybody in the ACC. So we'll have to see. I don't think anything's guaranteed.
For sure. I think that's it. That's what's going to make the offseason exciting, right? Is
It is,
we'll
yeah.
get
That's what I can't
hopefully some
wait.
resolution.
I can't
Well,
wait for it. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for joining. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you have a happy new year, and tell your friends and family, we appreciate everything that you guys have been doing over there on your Four Horsemen podcast. And thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you spending some time.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm really
You
glad
bet.
to be back on the show and look forward to the next appearance.
Okay, we'll see you later. Thank you very much. I'm going to
All right.
clap Dylan out of here. Thank you so much, Dylan, for being here. Everybody, thanks for joining today. I know it's a little bit early. I missed you last week. I apologize about that. But it's been a fun off season or in between season, bowl season. Been some really good games, and I want you guys to know I'm constantly thinking about you. Um, Rock and Rant, I got to see. Did I read these? Rock and Rant says, "You seem like a good dude, but no offense, you guys are the ones who canceled the rivalry could have kept on happening before the ACC or despite the ACC." That's probably not, Dylan's probably not the guy to take that up with. It sounded to me like Dylan's probably the guy who wanted to keep that going. But Notre Dame obviously has made some strategic decisions there, Rock, that yeah, that's the way it goes. Jay Lamont, thank you for giving us a thumbs up. Thank you for subscribing. I would invite everybody else to subscribe to the channel. That helps us out quite a bit. Give us that thumbs up that Jay was talking about. We appreciate all the time that you guys have spent with us in this last almost 2 years. And I'm just letting everybody know we're gearing up for a fantastic, another great off season, and it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about realignment, as we've just been talking about. We're talking about the NCAA and then the governance, everything that goes into the structures around that. We'll continue with the college football playoff. I think the meetings that'll be happening in March, April, there may be changes even for 2025 if they can get everybody to agree to things like reseeding after the first round or possibly going to 14 teams. All those things are coming. So if you're new to the channel, watching on Twitter, make sure you come over on YouTube, take a second and subscribe. That really helps us out. And then, of course, we're going to invite everybody to continue to give us those memberships so that we can provide more and more content that is built only for members. And I'm just really quick going to show everybody what that content looks like. A lot of channels will say, we have offline content for you, and they have maybe 10 videos, right? This is our video bank. And I'm going to just, is there a way to, and there's no way I can make it go huge, but I'm going to show this to you. Our video bank for member videos is well over 50 videos that are for members. Now, there are videos, standalone videos that are for non-members too, but I'm just letting everybody know, if you're into realignment or anything that has to do with the ACC, the media negotiations, any of that stuff, NCAA news, that's our ballywick. That's where we really make hay. And that's where we did all these videos. And they're not out of date. None of these out of date because nothing happened with the ACC in the offseason. We're going into another offseason, and there will be more videos, more content. Those are all for members. So just wanted to give a quick plug for that before we moved on to anything else. You guys, thank you so much for everything you've done. This has been a fantastic season. The team really, really respects each one of you. We hope we're providing good content. Continue to give us feedback on YouTube and on Twitter. Let us know how we're doing. When we make mistakes, we own them. Make mistakes all the time. Say things we either shouldn't say or at the time we're out of context, that we try to make those things good. But just from an editor's standpoint, I want to go back to this comment that came up earlier. I didn't want to cut into our show too much about it right this second, but this thing right here really just drives me nuts. I got to get back to this. This whole idea of the where's it at? The Utah, this thing right here. taking a break from BYU Utah tampering discussion. Look, I don't care who you are, what your content is. I don't care what your opinions are. You can say whatever you want. What you can't do is accuse people of lying, cheating, stealing. Can't do that. It's called libel, and you can be sued for it. Without proof, you are on the hook for the things you say. We hold ourselves to that same standard. Always have, always will. If we make a mistake, we will own it. If we say something that's out of school that turns out to be not only false but negligent, we would own that. Okay? I'm not seeing that from a lot of other contributors. There are some. There are others that are hiding under the, well, I didn't say it, JoJo said it, so I'm not responsible. Right? In my opinion, that's BS. You guys do with that what you will. This is my show, and I get to say what I want. I want everybody to know that's where we're at. So if you guys have a problem with something we're saying here, let me know immediately. We will address it. I will go and record a separate video and say, hey, we screwed this up. We own this. So far, I've never had to make one of those videos. Not saying I won't. Haven't had to do it. I would encourage other people that have other shows, take responsibility for your content and own it, right? Somebody says something, one, call attention to it, and two, take ownership for it, right? And that's just the way it goes. Don't hide behind these innocuous sayings that basically are, oh, wait, I didn't say this. My guest said it, and I just let it go without any challenge. I'm not on the hook for that. In my opinion, I think you are. So I know you guys watch a bunch of other shows. There's other content creators out there, fine and dandy. I hope you're successful in all your endeavors. But around here, if you're supporting this channel, if you support us, I want you to know I'm standing on a hill saying I'm making a declaration. This is what we do and this is how we do it. And if you're not getting that from other content creators, I would encourage you maybe to encourage them to make changes, because we're getting into an age where just saying everything off the top of your head is not okay. There are some things you simply can't say without cause, without some sort of payment. And now I'm off my soapbox. I'm not going to do that on Twitter anymore. I'm Twittered out when it comes to the tampering crap with BYU. You attack my school with specific allegations, I am going to address them, and I'm not going to let you just skate by. And people who have said just drop it, it's not worth the argument, have missed the point. So, all right, I'm off my high horse now. That's done. I hope everybody has a great holiday, New Year, and we will catch you on Friday night. Catch us at 7 p.m. Eastern. I believe that's the right time. Moen didn't correct me with a different time. We'll see you Friday night. We'll be talking quarterfinal games, which are tonight and tomorrow. I can't believe they're already here. And we'll be looking forward to some new matchups next week. And those should be exciting. So thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Again, I want to thank Dylan with Four Horsemen Pod. Make sure you look him up on Twitter. Guy's a stud, does great content. You want to look him up and follow him, and do whatever you can. They're doing some good stuff over there. And I love the way they support their school. Other than that, everybody have a great night. Go Big 12. Go Arizona State. Let's shock the world, eh? Everybody, let's cheer for the ASU tomorrow. Is it tonight or tomorrow? To win that game. We need Arizona State to win. And Boise State, plucky little kids that got in without playing anybody. That's great. I hope Boise State does well. To be honest, I think Boise State would have been better off getting the 12 seed and playing on the road and catching a team without any rest. That's my opinion. We'll have to see how they do. Anyway, everybody have a great night. Stay out of trouble. And as always, continue to follow us here at College Football Mafia Network and all of my products associated with Big 12 Mafia and the Big 10 Mafia and Moen After Dark. And who else am I missing? Big Freaking Friday, Wild Ute University, all that stuff. Don't forget about us. We're here. We will see you Friday night. Peace out. See ya.